What's up, guys? Welcome into another edition of Bogey Free. I'm your host, Matt Jones. You can find me on Twitter at MattJonesTFR, and I am being joined tonight by Alex Blickle. You can find him on Twitter at AlexBlickle1. What's up, man? How's it going?
It's going pretty well. Decent week last week. I typically don't love birdie fests, but this is actually like one of the course fit models that goes a little bit against birdie fests in a fun way. So kind of looking forward to this week more than I would have expected.
Yeah, it's a good little tournament. I know everybody likes to dunk on it, of course. I feel like just at this point, I feel like everybody's just kind of like, all right, let's just get to the playoffs.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
there's a little bit of fatigue, I think, built in with why people might not when we're going through and making our Mount Rushmore of tournaments, the Rocket Mortgage might not be on it. But it gives us an opportunity to attack another slate, so that's always a good thing. Obviously, it's up in Detroit, and I was actually just reading through and looking at your speaking of your course fit, and I thought it was super interesting as well. So why don't you go ahead and give us a little insight into why it might be a little bit different than people perhaps expect?
Yeah, so typically what we see on Birdie Fest golf courses is a real emphasis on iron play and putting. And usually that takes away from, of course, around the green play because everyone's just hitting a bunch of greens. You don't have to get up and down too often. But it also usually takes away from driving. And I think a lot of that is that like the tee shots maybe are just so simple that everyone's going to hit it to a similar spot. And then it's just who can hit it the closest and who can convert the most opportunities. But what we see here, somewhat surprising, is a major weight on both aspects off the tee. So you have to be long off the tee and you have to be accurate off the tee to really get the full advantage. And actually over 50% of the total predictive weight is on off the tee in some way, 21.5% to driving distance, 30% to driving accuracy. And as always, that's our proprietary strokes gained driving accuracy metric, not the percentage of fairways hit, which doesn't actually tell you what you want it to tell you. And then at the expense of that is approach play all the way down to 10% and around the green play under 10% at just 8%. And then putting is as what we would always expect at a birdie fest, 30% of the weight to putting. So it's this weird combination of off the tee and putting. You think of past contenders, Matt Wolff, Bryson DeChambeau, and suddenly you see, oh, okay, no wonder it's saying this because that really is the prototype that has done the best here, and I think we will continue to see that. And because of that, it's going to lead us to some contrarian guys, just because it's a birdie fest. People are going to look a lot to approach play, and that's just not that predictive here.
Yeah, and you mentioned without going fully into it, for newer watchers / listeners, could you just give like the 1 minute like why our strokes gain that you came up with here is for driving is a little bit different than what people might see sort of floating around elsewhere?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are two big advantages to using strokes gained driving accuracy as opposed to percentage of fairways hit. So the first thing is percentage of fairways hit doesn't account for the distance. If you're a long hitter, your margin of error to still hit a fairway is less than if you're a short hitter. So we like to use the comparison to a quarterback and his average depth of target. If you're not adjusting a quarterback's completion percentage for his average depth of target, you're losing a lot of signal and a lot of value in the numbers. So the first thing is using a strokes gained driving accuracy will account for that. And the second, and I think the one that's probably a little bit underestimated just how important it is that not every missed fairway is equal. A lot of the time, a missed fairway is a very accurate shot if you're missing on the right side, if you're missing away from hazardous bunkers or even a water hazard down the side. And, a lot of time, like I can attest to this as a professional player myself, like I might be aiming at the edge of a fairway. I might be aiming is so penal and that side isn't, particularly like on golf courses where the rough isn't a bad option. So it's the twofold thing where one, you're accounting for the distance. And the second thing is you're actually getting a reasonable estimate of, how So basically, like a player who misses in the wrong spot consistently, that issue isn't going to be reflected by the percentage of fairways that they hit. It will be reflected by their stroke gained driving accuracy.
Right. Yeah, and that's obviously what we're looking for. We're trying to always find something, whether it's something that we're completely making up ourselves or whether it's something that we just sort of can quickly back of the napkin calculate or intuit, um between something that is just in everybody's face, like there's driving accuracy, this is the percent of fairways hit, but you're right, and we've talked about it before, but it's one of those things where, like, even if you're just sort of understanding that concept and you can kind of apply it, and look at things slightly differently, you might be picking up something that either your opponent in DFS isn't, or maybe you're slightly ahead of the market on something, as far as course fit. And obviously I shouldn't say every book. Not every book has a model to account for things, because most of them are just copy pasting. But the books who are actually doing the work themselves, they have these models, and even if you're just slightly deviating from that, and you're directionally correct, you're going to find an edge, somehow, some way. So I think it's important to make sure that you're thinking about these things, and crossing from the football, the quarterback analogy here is another important one, because it helps you sort of think about, like, how can what I know about X sport help me bet Y sport, is one way to grab an edge, because I know for me personally, like, I'm very much in the golf and NFL Twitter sphere and echo chamber, whatever you want to call it. But then sometimes I'll hear an interview of, somebody who's doing like soccer analytics or basketball analytics. And I'm like, oh, like you can kind of cross and figure out, even, like I said, it doesn't have to be like earth shattering. It doesn't have to be something completely reinventing the wheel. You just have to find, like, a percent or two here and there, and you'll be profitable over the long haul, we hope, as long as you get a little bit of luck on your side.
Right, and we can continue with the football analogy on the stroke gained driving accuracy, because if the adjustment for distance is akin to adjusting for the average depth of target and completion percentage, then the like, not every miss is the same is equivalent to EPA per play, where an 8-yard completion on 3rd and 12 is going to count equivalently to completion percentage over expected as a 3rd and 6 conversion on an 8-yard completion, whereas EPA per play will really note the second one as far more valuable than the first, just like not every missed fairway and not every hit fairway is equivalent.
Right, exactly. You can see it, if you watch for an hour and a half on a Saturday afternoon, even if you're not following too closely, you can see there are shots that are technically good, whether it's hitting a fairway or hitting a green. Technically, statistically, it's going to make it look like something something happened in the golfer's favor, and you can tell it was clearly not what they were trying to do, and or just I mean, I guess we don't know what they exactly were trying to do, but you could tell that it definitely didn't make things easier for them.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I'm not like in any sport, I'm not necessarily like a watch the tape kind of person, but the just sort of having that domain knowledge of understanding, like, this could happen and look good in the box score, but it doesn't mean that it translates into like long-term success, I think is one of the most important things to understand, whether you're actually, sitting there charting and taking notes and gleaning things, or if you're just like, all right, I need to make sure that I'm trying to figure out some other way to quantify these things, because it doesn't work. It doesn't compute to just rely on something that I'm watching and I understand as like a non-professional that wasn't
Right.
that wasn't a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of the thing. Like when we're talking about the variance in strokes gained statistics within an event. Like I remember last week in chat, Josh and Axis and myself talking about looking at how a player is gaining or losing strokes in an event, like whether it's all iron play or all up driving or whatever, and using that to adjust their projections. And we all found that that's not really the case. And I think a big reason for that is that the live strokes gained are just going to have a ton of variance. It's not really going to reflect exactly how the guy is hitting the ball. It's not really going to affect it, or it's not going to reflect how the guy has putted. Like he might be putting really, really well. He might be consistently hitting his lines with great speed and the ball's not going in. And there might be somebody else who, pulled 2 putts and pushed 1 and they all broke a little bit more than they expected and they all went in. And his strokes gained putting looks fantastic. And so we just don't ever know. So much variance, and that's why we basically, like, whenever we can, we want to zoom out to a bigger sample size.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that Axis and I have had that conversation for sure, as far as like how much are you adjusting during the course of the tournament? Like when we're talking about betting, say single round matchups, like after heading into Sunday, are you like heavily relying on what's happened this week? Are you still relying heavily on your priors? And I always say, like, there's people that I respect that claim to do, like, literally just count like what's happened that week only. Again, I say claim because I don't really truly believe that people do 100% based on 54 holes. But I think that it is one of those things where there's a spectrum there, and finding where to land on that, whether you're like, I know for over the course of my power ranking model, realistically the most recent round is probably like maybe 1.5%. But at the same time, it's like, it's kind of hard to deny that like something else is happening within the tournament. And I haven't found an excellent way to quantify that. So I've sort of just split the difference a little bit. But it's one of those things where like there's something at play there for sure. I won't say momentum, because I know we're not supposed to say that. But something along those lines is definitely at play. And it's just a matter of like, does that quote unquote momentum always carry through? Probably not. And then on top of that, like, how much do you want to rely on that and sort of tempt fate, whether or not you're finding some real signal there?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer this or like speak to this both as a sort of like a data analyst, whatever, and also as a golfer. And the data analyst in me says, like, yeah, there's not really anything to it. We can never predict like what's real and what isn't. But the player in me says, like, there absolutely are events where I know that I'm playing really well. I have a very enhanced trust in my own swing, or maybe I have a feel that's really, really working for me on the greens and helping me make like 6-footer after 6-footer, and I know that I'm going to be able to make the next one because I just have that feel. Right. But there's no guarantee that I'm going to have that the next day. So I think it's more like just within a round, maybe that can really stick and be the case. But then there are also days where you have that feeling, and then you make the turn and it's gone or something like that. So I think we've seen a lot, like Piercy in the last round, for example. Like, you would have said, "Oh man, he's really got it. He's feeling it again today through the first like 6 holes or so," and then bam, it was gone. And so I think, like, going back to what I said a few minutes ago, like, anytime you can just zoom out, you should, because if Piercy was a better player, then what he was doing would have been more likely to be able to be sustained. He's not that good, so of course he was more likely to kind of crash and burn in the way he did, and boy, was it glorious to watch.
Yeah, and I mean, the poor guy, if that stretch happens, he has that stretch in him no matter what. But if that stretch happens Friday afternoon, then he doesn't make the cut, and it's just a whatever thing. Now he's a choker and whatever else. Like, it's funny how like this kind of stuff can just spin out of control, because realistically, like, if you don't realize that that's in his range of outcomes, like, what are we doing? Like, it's there somewhere. Absolutely, it's gonna happen.
it was probably more likely than for him to go out, shoot 6 under and win.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
I would almost guarantee it.
Yeah. All right. Let's you know me, I always get sidetracked, and like I prefer talking about that kind of stuff most of the time, but we do have a tournament to chat about. We hit some course fit already, and you have just a monster card this week. Tons of plays. Don't know where to start. Where should we go first?
Yeah, I've only got the one play this week. And it's sort of interesting because there are a number of guys that I really like on DraftKings. And I'm looking at everybody's number, and it just seems like for whatever reason, this field, like everyone's just priced down. And so all I'm left with is Sepp Straka at 150 to 1. I'm using it on Bet Rivers, where there's a 6 place each way that pays out 1/5 to any of the top 6 spots. But really, like, this play reminds me a lot of the Tom Hoge play last week, in the sense that he's coming in with pretty terrible form, a string of missed cuts. And I think that has heavily influenced this number. But now he's getting to a course that's a really good fit for him. He's great off the tee, and he makes putts, and that's pretty much all he's good for. And so he's a great fit for this course fit model, just like Tom Hoge was last week. And just like Tom Hoge, one of the reasons why he's really struggled of late is that he's had a series of courses that really didn't fit his play style and his skill set. Now he's on a course that does. And just like we saw with Hoge, it only takes one solid round to remember, oh yeah, I'm a good golfer. I know how to do this. I should be confident here and believe in my chances. And then just like that, you connect 4 rounds together and end up playing really well. So I really like this number for him. I just think it's a major overreaction in the market to have him suddenly priced this high in an event like this.
Yeah, I think we see this a lot with the these, I'll call them interesting fields. Just these like sort of weird, like not like the worst. Like there are some guys here, but it's just not like, it's not spread out enough. So like the books kind of can't figure out where to put everybody, and it just becomes like kind of like a jumbled mess. Like it doesn't have the same, like flow through the whole, through the whole board that a typical week does. And that does leave some opportunities for these longer shots where you're like, there's no way. I don't like, there's no way like some of these guys should be like over 100 to 1 in this field, because it takes like 2 guys busting out and not caring about it and ejecting, and then you're like, all right, we're sitting pretty. So I do have one of those guys on my card as well. I made Cam Young like plus 1,200. So I missed the 22. I know there was a 22 out there earlier in the week. I think Axis might have put it up actually. But MGM was still hanging a 20 there. So I took that. He DM'd me about how we're both betting Matt Kuchar this week, and I don't really know what to make of that. He suggested that we both check our models independently for bugs. Maybe there's something going on here. But doesn't it just feel like, I don't know, he hasn't been like amazing, but what he's made, like just a quick glance, like 8 straight cuts, like he can like pop up out of nowhere a little bit. And I just think 70 to 1 in this field, like we know that he can win. Like I know that's like mostly a stupid thing to say most of the time, and I know he hasn't won terribly recently. But like he could, like if he won this week, nobody would be like, what the hell? Like where did this come from?
Yeah.
And he's 70 to 1. Like, I don't know. I think my sim, I think, had him like in the 50, like low 50s, high 40s. So a nice little chunk of value for me. And then my boy Callum, he's my long shot, my 130 to 1 over at DK. I think that's still there. I'd have to double check. I know that it moved at at every other book, it moved down pretty low. Like I think I saw some 90s maybe, somewhere in that range. But yeah, I think that this is like we've seen him spike up and disappear every so often, and I just think that this is like the type of place where he could just go super low, and just sort of like again, just needs one or two of those like tippy top guys to get out of the way. He can score well. So I think that uh this is not the card that I envisioned when I went to went to sleep Sunday night thinking about this field. But it's what we got. It's where the numbers led us. And then
I do like your card. Cameron Young, you sort of have this like nice mix of guys who both fit the course fit model in one like exceptional way, not necessarily throughout, but Cameron Young might be the best golf or best driver in the entire world. I think he's the only guy now who's gaining over half a stroke in both driving distance and driving accuracy, which pretty damn good right there. So, and the other thing with Cameron Young is I saw he has a 100 volatility score in your volatility number. So that's obviously like if it basically, I think that says that if he's on, he probably wins. And like, that's all it takes. He just has to be on and then he wins this event, considering his baseline projections are so close to the other guys and he's so volatile. And then Kuchar's sort of the opposite end of the spectrum. He's certainly not good off the tee, but his baseline putting expectation is gaining half a stroke. So if you told me that someone in this field is going to go out there, gain 10 strokes for the week on the greens and win, Kuchar would be like on the short list of guys that I predicted that, okay, it has to be one of these guys. And so I really like both of those. And then Taryn, yeah, he's certainly flashed the upside of late. So I really like your card as a whole.
Yeah, I've been pretty unlucky this year. I think I've hit one or two outrights, but I would have to go back. I'm pretty confident I've had at least 5 or 6 either 36 hole or 54 hole leaders that haven't figured out how to get it done. So it's been a bit of a frustrating year. But hopefully we can close out the season here with a win or two. Hopefully for
You just gotta bet
Axe's
Cam
sake.
Smith more.
Yeah, well,
Just bet
yeah, I
Cam
mean,
Smith more. I've got 3 outright wins on him. That's half of my outright wins this season. Just Cam Smith.
yeah, I mean, of course, I think I've been on him every time that he hasn't gotten it done. Um, I know of at least one. I'm trying to think of which tournament it was.
I think it was the Memorial. We had the lead after
Yeah,
Friday.
yeah, and then we were counting our money, and then it all just went away. But that's how it goes sometimes. And
Mhm.
last year, I think I had 8, and like probably 3 of them, like I had no business happening. So it
That's
ebbs
great.
and flows. It's one of those things where it's like,
Mhm.
what do we have? 40 some odd chances, and you're going to be limited, and you're going to see some swings here and there. So either way, it's been a fun season, and hopefully we can, like I
Mhm.
said, hopefully can wrap up with a couple of winners on the show. Other than that, man, I think we're all set tonight. You have anything to leave the folks with?
The only other thing I'd add is on that note of like just how narrow the margins can be in picking outrights. It's one of the reasons why I've looked a little bit more lately towards each way bets with Bet Rivers, is the one that I have access to that allows that.
Mhm.
And basically like it feels like you maybe lose a little bit of expected value going away from the outright, because an outright is a very specific bet. You're betting on that ceiling outcome, that very specific ceiling outcome. So maybe you lose a little bit there, but I think you then also become more likely to actually realize your expected value, just because if the guy is in contention and he just doesn't quite get it done, you very clearly were making a very great bet, and at least you get rewarded for it to some degree. So I think based on like whatever your goals are as a bettor, just let that decide whether you want to go a little bit more towards the each way bets, or just go all in on the outrights, and just it's either all or nothing. Because I think like Again, like over the long run, you might be better off just going outrights, but in the short run, you're more likely to get wins here and there that do stack up with the each way bets.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that I feel like as long as you're you're shopping and not just like
Mhm.
not just betting it to bet it. Um, when
Yeah,
Bet Rivers or Bet 365 or whichever book you have access to that does each way that offers each ways, you're almost always getting a better top 5 or top 8 or whatever it is than you would get
yeah,
posted elsewhere. So that's also important to remember.
yeah,
Like if we're saying that we're putting an each way on something, it doesn't just mean automatically you should be betting an outright and a top 5. Like the numbers still have to
correct,
make
correct.
sense.
Mhm.
You know, I
Yeah,
I think I would imagine that most people probably realize that, but there's definitely some that like you have to do the calculation and be like, all right, well, if they're
yeah,
getting, if they're getting a fifth of the odds at plus 150, and I'm only getting like 20 to 1 on this top 5, it's it doesn't mean that
yeah.
there's still it
Or
doesn't mean
or
that
and
there's
sometimes
value there.
Yeah, and sometimes what I found is that the numbers end up being the same, but with the each way, you get an additional spot paid out. Where like
Right.
the payout might be the exact same as the top five, but this time you get 6 spots, and that's crucial. Like it really
Yeah.
does change the math. The only other thing I'd say along those lines are you don't necessarily want to go to the each way when there's a significantly better outright number out there. Like I chose the Sevstraka 150 to 1 each way when I could have gone to another book for a 160, maybe even a 170 each way. But there have been times where like Bet Rivers is offering an 80 to 1 each way, and I can go grab 140 or 150 on another book. I'm not each way in that
Right.
number and just letting that ride.
Yeah, you're not going for the moral victory, just to hope for the top
Exactly.
6 payout. We're still
Exactly.
trying to make money
Hmm.
here. So just I think that people again, I think that most people know that, but I still have so many people either DMing or talking in Discord or, even like my buddies who are starting to get into betting now that it's legal. And it's like just freaking line shop. Like you have options. Like
Yeah.
you wouldn't buy, if two gas stations are across the street, you wouldn't go to the more expensive one. Like why are you doing that when you're betting?
Hmm.
Just have 2 books. You don't need to open 8 accounts and spread all your money out across the world. Just open 2 books and just check both before you click bet. Like that's all you have to do.
Or use the FTN prop shop. Don't sign up for any books yet. Use the FTN prop shop. Wherever that one sends you to, okay, sign up for that book. Next week, if it's a different book, sign up for that one. And then, maybe 6 weeks from now, you're signed up on 4 or 5 different books, but at no point did you have to go sign up and then sign up and sign up. It's
Yeah.
it's just real easy that way.
And we probably should have mentioned this up at the beginning, but starting next week we will also be on Game Plus Network. So make sure you check that out, and
Mhm.
we'll have all the details, channels, how to find it, all that good stuff starting next week. But other than that, I think we're all set. Alex, good luck this week. I'll be rooting for Straka if none of my guys make it through, and we will talk soon.